Alright, hello everyone. Um, so, um, this is gonna be the final portion of the Iran, Russia, China, World War III. I'm gonna title, and together this is gonna cover a little bit about the Martians and the Micronova event. So, uh, first, when it comes to the Micronova event, most some of the people that are really digging into this right now are uh, Bright Insight or Jimmy Corsetti. Um, the other one is Suspicious Observers. I'm not for sure if this guy's a PhD, but he definitely has knowledge and he's building an observatory. Um, and then there is also the Creative Society. Um, so, um, let's. Uh, okay, so since I'm going to tag these people in here, I want to go ahead and introduce myself. My channel is dedicated toward my novel in which I am characters in a play. And so a lot of everything, actually everything that I say on this channel relates to my novel. And, but I do have a BA in English, an MBA, and a Doctor of Management in Organizational Leadership. And I've taken two classes on astrophysics, so I'm not completely ignorant on that subject. So let's get into first. Let's look at this. I'm just showing you that some believe that this may have been a city on Mars when it got destroyed. NASA does call this Atlantis. Um, not the Atlantis, as in on Earth, but uh, just kind of one on Mars. And it looks like it was possibly a city that got destroyed when Mars went through its horrible destruction about a million years ago. All right. And this is something that I talked about because this is were kind of maybe some of the divide on the information, or maybe both of them are true. But some of the documents that I'm going to show you state that Martians came to Antarctica about a million years ago, whereas I've read other information and heard other information that the pyramids on Mars created a Merkaba or a synthetic Merkaba, which is a fake Merkaba, um, in a way, but it's still a Merkaba. Um, but it allowed some of the Martians to escape Mars and come to Atlantis about 70,000 years ago after a huge destruction of Lemuria. Lemuria, I don't, what wasn't completely destroyed at the time, but it took a severe blow about 70,000 years ago. And then it was kind of completely destroyed, I think, about 45,000 years ago. But apparently our bodies can just kind of create this on our own, but you got to be vibrating at a high level frequency. And if you're interested in this video, then it will be in the link the description below, along with everything that I've shown you on here. Um, so that's another portion of this. Okay, and then here's the information from Mars that I was telling you about ago. How the CIA has used remote viewing to learn about Mars pyramids and the inhabitants. And it was approximately 1 million years ago that they were looking at this, and we'll get into what a physicist said about this in a later portion. Um, but it's an interesting article, um, and um, it talks about basically what happened on Mars. It was destroyed very brutally. It talked about how some were basically hiding out in a certain area while other Martians were looking for a way to take the survivors to someplace else, which was Earth, um, as their planet was destroyed by another alien civilization. And there's that question, like I showed you before, about how they may have came here to Antarctica, which, okay, so now we're going to get into some of the details about the Micronova event and what Halloween might be about. Halloween might be the actual celebration of the flood, the Day of the Dead, when a lot of people died, which is linked with the comet Enki and the Taurid complex. And this happens, um, there's 2 times of the year that it happens. There's one in June that it happens, and there's one that falls around, I would say, October 31st to through November the 17th. And it's because all these civilizations have this celebration around this time. And it's said to be the reason, or one of the reasons, um, that kind of like signal this Micronova event when possible devastating meteor shower um, hits the Earth. As you can see, and we'll be getting into more of this research a little bit later too. But so, and then also a lot of that information about Halloween and Enki, the Taurid complex, and the constellation with Taurus. And I think I can't remember the other one in there, but Randall Carlson talks about it, about how something goes through the shoulder, and is a indication of this Micronova event. But Randall Carlson talks about this on After School, and it was I thought it was a pretty interesting video, and the way how he covered it in detail was very fascinating and added to the evidence um, about this whole situation. And that's what I'm doing right now is I'm doing a huge gathering of evidence, and I'm going to present it in a later slide, but this is just a quick overview of what I will be going over. Um, but this is a very important video to check out. Um, Randall Carlson, like I said, does a great job by connecting Halloween um, to the Torrid complex and uh, the catastrophe that happened about 12,000 years ago. And then there's more evidence of the Comet Inky and prehistoric village. So this shows more evidence that we're gathering about um, the Torrid complex, the Comet Inky, and basically catastrophe on the Earth. How these signs, and I believe these people also talk about how the sun will turn black for about 3 days before this happened. See, such an event may have occurred at this time about 12,800 years ago. Dating might be a little off. I know At Suspicious Observer talks about it, but let's see, and here's where we're going on this. See where it talks about the 6,000 years right here, and then in Samaria. So about every 6,000 years, this is said to happen, like Suspicious Observers has been talking about. But there's two different theories that I'm going to discuss at the end, and which I'm going to also talk about. But first, let's present just a little bit of evidence. And then there's this scientific paper right here that talks about the Paleolithic extinctions and the Torrid complex. And once again, we get to the Younger Dryas event and how it relates to this. And if you want to read about this, of course, it'll be in the description below. And in the conclusion, let's see here, talks about, it talks about the object of the paper is not to claim that such an encounter took place about 12,900 years ago. This is a matter for Earth scientists, but to show that a convincing astronomical scenario can be constructed, which seems to give a satisfactory match to the major geophysical features and the year that all this basically happened. Although I don't agree with this right here. Right here. I think it does have relation to current impact hazard assessments. But I just wanted to show that these things are being discussed even within the scientific community. And then we have another one, which is comets and planetary cataclysms. And talks about the origin of the word. talks about the relationship with secret societies, which was something that I talked about in the other parts of this video, and I'm going to connect the secret society part here at the end, because I'm going to basically sum all this up. Oh, this is a long one. Okay, so, but basically, I'm not going to go through this verbatim because this is a lot, but it basically talks a lot about what Randall Carlson was talking about in the video, with how these celebrations occur, you know, around between October 31st and November the 17th, and how it's talking about Noah's flood and how it connects to it. And basically how we might be coming back to another one of these events. And like I said, the Torrid Stream, the Torrid Complex. And this gives a really good written instead of verbal explanation of everything that has been occurring, along with really, really good evidence. So I'm going to leave this down here for you because I just wanted to show how everything connected in this. Like I said, later on I'm going to do more of a deeper dive into this. And provide better evidence, but right now I'm just wrapping up what I've been talking about before. Alright. And then finally, we're coming here to where the physicist claims Mars was attacked by nukes, and not only does he say that they were attacked by nukes, but it was from another alien species that destroyed it. And this is where it talked about how they were trying to, and then after this destruction that happened on the planet, they were trying to escape, and some of them actually did escape, and they came to Earth. Whether it was 1 million years ago or 70,000 years ago or both, is left for discussion. So I wanted to talk about some of that. So to summarize it up, talking about the Martians came here, whether it was 1 million or 70,000 years ago. 70,000 years ago was at least the time when the Martians and the humans started having major disputes, which led to on and off wars and cataclysms. The Martians rebuilt the pyramids to try to they rebuilt them a long time ago, but they didn't quite use it 70,000 years ago, but a meteor struck then, and then they decided that if the same thing was going to happen again, or a real devastating one, that would happen. And they held off for a long time to use it. I think it was being used for electricity and for other things, but but they ended up using it at the Younger Dryas event, in which they activated it in a way to try and stop either the Micronova event or the comet coming to collide with the Earth, or asteroid or meteor, whichever one it was. And it failed. It failed actually miserably, and so miserably that it created more havoc on the Earth than what the natural disaster would have done, because they forgot how to actually use the pyramids, because they hadn't really used it in that manner in a while, because I believe they were trying to activate the Merkaba, and it failed, and when it failed, it created dimensional tears on our planet, and the only thing that I've been able to think of that might be able to heal those dimensional tears is liquid mercury, kind of like in a ball. But that's just a guess of mine at the moment. But that would make, that might help explain some of the things like the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Tail, and Skinwalker Ranch, where weird kind of things happen to where people experience extra dimensional travel, and there's also some other few places, but this may have been the event that actually did that, when the Martians misused the pyramids. Either way, after the flood, I believe that one was the destruction of Atlantis where they did that, but the one that was about 6,000 years ago, which I believe was the one that Noah was a part of, when that occurred, they, where was I going with this? I talked about how after the flood, when Noah was, naked, and Ham came in and uncovered his father's nakedness, actually meant that he had sex with Noah's wife, which would have been his mother, and she gave birth to Canaan, and that's why Noah cursed Canaan, but then and that really disturbed Canaan, so he created a secret society basically within his family, and they said that they should never tell the truth, and that's why there's probably so many lies, is that stems back to something called the will of Canaan, what he said on his deathbed. And then the Canaanites, the descendants of, and the other descendants of Ham, ended up conquering the lands of Shem, which in the Bible, when we talk about Abraham, that's what his lineage was about reclaiming the lands of Shem from Canaan, because that was not something that the all was okay with, because that was supposed to be their lands, Shem's lands. And so that, continues all the way until Moses reaches there, and then Joshua further conquers the lands, and Israel is born. That's kind of what that story is about. So, but I also believe that the Canaanites also had an alliance with these Martians, and that's what created the elite um, and the secret societies, and they know this knowledge, and they're trying to use this to um, control us going into the next cycle in a more drastic way. And then there's also two theories that I'm looking into um, between this Micronova event and Jimmy Corsetti, Bright Insight, and Suspicious Observers. Um, they can correct me if I'm wrong. They perceive that the sun is going to continue heating up and then creating this kind of like dust around the sun, and for about 3 days, and then it kind of like ejaculates out onto the earth, and that begins the tipping of the earth 90 degrees, and all this catastrophe between volcanoes and earthquakes, and the crust kind of just moving on its own. And then there's the Creative Society. And the Creative Society, from what I'm understanding, kind of goes along the belief that the sun is fixing to go into this sleeping period stage. And it's not gonna. There's normally like, I think it's like a minimum and a maximum. It's an 11-year cycle of the sun. And after it gets out of this minimum, which is supposed to be very, very low activity, the sun's not gonna go into a maximum. It's just gonna stay in this minimum, and it's gonna stay in this minimum until once again we get to the black dust around the sun. That's gonna shoot out and hit the earth, and then cause this Micronova event. But another thing that the Creative Society talked about, which kind of piqued my interest, and I couldn't remember if it was the 12,000 year period or the 6,000 year period, but it talked about how the there's a descending and an ascending to this, to where on the descending part it's kind of like Earth is in hell, and humanity like loses a lot of its we'll say special awareness. But when it comes to the ascending part, which is supposedly the part that we're coming to, that humanity gains a lot of awareness, and where possibilities like this Merkaba that I was talking about before could be a possibility, because they said that they had scientific research, and I saw the paper, but I didn't necessarily go and dig it up. Not yet, because I haven't gotten to that point where I'm going to gather all the evidence and present it. But they talked about how they changed the atmospheric conditions to the past, and they found out that that snake venom in that instance wasn't something that killed you but healed you, and that I think they tested out on insects and maybe other small animals, and they found out that they lived like 3 times as longer, and that could explain the ages that we see in the Bible, possibly. And so there's a lot of information on this, and I'm going to take some time and sort it all out. Now, I'm only going to be doing one video a week, because at least until April the 3rd, because of the workshop that I'm in, because I'm turning my dissertation that I did into a peer-reviewed published paper. And I think I need a little bit more time, and I don't want to put too much on my plate. So I'm going to go back to one video a week. Well, I'm also going to be researching this, and then and that's going to be mostly concentrating on my dissertation until it's done. And then I'm going to go back to talking about how Goldman Sachs created BRICS and how this alliance between Russia, China, and Iran have existed since 2001. I'm going to be talking about that next while I'm gathering this evidence. And I've also talked to um, at Brian Escow and his podcast Political Identity, and I will be going there on there probably after April to um, talk about the evidence that I've gathered um, and talk about this a little bit more in depth. I know I touched it maybe a little bit in the last episode, but I'm going to go into more of a further explanation on his podcast. Um, but I'll also do one on YouTube as well and kind of break it down and lay the evidence out. Um, that way you can cross-reference between the podcast and what I got on YouTube if you want. But that's all I have today. I hope you enjoyed this. And this event, if it occurs, is not supposed to occur for at least another 10 to 20 years. And there's a possibility that it may not happen too. Um, but it's something to prepare for because you do have time. Especially if more evidence comes out that this is likely to occur. Okay, so that's a wrap. And this has been a Micronova production.